Welcome back to the Django tutorial series. So this is going to be our last video, and this is going to tackle the styling of a certain kind of page, in this case, our to-do page. So in here, we're going to be discussing what could be added to style a certain kind of Django page, as well as discussing a bit about what static is and how we could put it on our page as well. Along with a bit of furnishing as well, since this is our last tutorial, we're going to be finishing up this to-do list and pretty much getting all the basic functionalities and design out of the way. So without further ado, let's jump into the code. Okay, so let's go back to the Django tutorial. So last time we discussed pretty much just furnishing our templates here, just adding specific text that may need to be added on to create our to-do list. So we kind of furnished up our templates here to make things a lot more sensible and kind of condense all our files in here. So we aren't really repeating as much code as we should be. But with that being said, our point of discussion is not actually with those files. For today, we're going to be discussing static and styling our page. So what is static? Well, first, let's create that static folder to declare some static files. So static files include things like text, images, fonts, and pretty much just anything that doesn't need any server-side rendering. So what would server-side rendering mean? So things like messing with the models or pretty much functionalities available in Django are not going to be needed for these static files. These just need to show up on a certain page. So for this, in static, we can actually put our styles in here to style our page. So we're going to create a new file in here. We're going to say style.css. There you go. And in here, we're going to be putting all the styles for this Django page. So let's try and add some styles. Firstly, let's put in a little basic reset. And then we'll use an asterisk in here. So the asterisk means to target all of the elements. So we'll try and do a little review as well of CSS if you're not familiar. So in here, we'll say the margin will be 0 and the padding will be 0. So this pretty much just resetting all of the spacings of the browser contents. So these are your elements in your HTML essentially. And we'll say the box sizing is border box. And the font family is Arial and sans serif is the type of font we're using here. Okay, so let's try and see this on the page right now. So we're going to do, before that though, we'll need to turn on our scripts. We'll say vend scripts activate. There you go. And we'll run the server like so. Okay, so let's open this on our browser. All right, so it should show something like this. There you go. So this is what it currently looks like. So you can actually see nothing much has actually changed. Not even our certain font family is being used. And we're also seeing another error here. Field ID expected a number, but got favicon.ico, which is an icon format. So for this, we could do a little quick fix for this before we continue on with static. So in case you may need to fix this up. For this, our PK needs to have a certain kind of data type. So we'll say int PK for all of these routes. So we'll say int PK for this and this as well. And there you go. Looks like all our errors have gone away. Okay, so that is the reason why we need to do that, because it's currently trying to detect everything that's going through this URL. So right now, we're trying to say only get the ones that are integers, and then we'll change our URL to a certain resource. Okay, so tangent aside, hopefully that was able to get rid of that error as well on your end. So let's go back to style, and we could see that it's currently not being applied to the page. So that is something that we need to fix up. So in order to actually apply to our page, what we need to do is go to our base right here. And in our base, yep, there you go. We start off with a load. Let me just restart that again. So we say reset. And then in here, we're going to put in a load static. So what does this mean? So it's pretty simple, pretty self-explanatory. We're just loading the static files that are located in this application, the to-do pages application, like so. Okay, so in here, we could actually put a link to this static file by doing something like this. So we'll say link, and then it should autocomplete to something like this. The href for this will be, once again, we're going to be using Jinja to do so. So let's say static, and then get the specific file name. We'll say style.css, and it should load it up. Okay, so we're currently not seeing it right now, but if we refresh, it has worked. So that is how we apply styles to our page. So this is one of the key things you need to know as a Django developer if you're working with HTML templates. Okay, so that's good. So let's keep on working on the rest of the styling for the page. All right, so next thing we're going to target is some general styling. So we'll start off with the A tag. The A tag could have some text decoration. Maybe we'll take that out. And then the color will be black. And then the transition for color will be 0.3 seconds and will have an ease effect. So in here, we're just taking out the underlines, and we also added in a transition because later on we'll add a little hover effect. Actually, we'll add it a hunt right now. Here you go. If we hover over a color, we'll say something like this kind of blue. There you go. And when we hover over them, let's refresh. It should look something like this. So there you go. That looks pretty clean. So when you hover over it, it's not instantly changing color. It's like a bit of a fade in, one would say. Okay, there you go. Next thing is we'll target the body. So for the body, let's have a background here. The background will be this kind of RGB value. We'll say 63, 94, and 251. If you want a different kind of background, you could use, in my case, I'm doing a linear gradient or a different kind of gradient. You could actually search those up on the web to look for a gradient that you would like. So for me, I'm going to say background as well will be a radial gradient. For this, it will first be a circle. It will have an RGBA, 63, 94, 251, and 1. This will be 0%. And RGBA, 252, 70, 107, and 1. And we'll say 100% for this. Okay, so let's take a bit to discuss what's happening in here. So in this radial gradient, we're starting off with a circle, meaning the gradient will start in the very middle of the page. We'll say at the 0% point, meaning the very middle of the gradient, we'll have this blue color. RGBA would mean red, green, blue, and alpha, meaning the red channel, the green channel, the blue channel, and the opacity of the color. So this is how we create custom colors. As well, you could either use a hex code or an RGBA color like so. Or you could even edit this to be something else using the Visual Studio Code color picker. So let's refresh this. There you go. So right now we're not seeing a radial gradient, unfortunately. So let's see if I could fix that. There you go. That looks a bit better, albeit a little weird. So maybe we could do something like a linear gradient instead. And let's refresh this. Ooh, okay. So what we could add to this most likely is going to be a background repeat, and it'll be no repeat. And then we'll say background size will be cover. Oh, we'll add in a height for this, make it 100 view height. There you go. So that looks a lot better. So we just needed a height for all the content of this to-do list. There you go. That works out for us. So that should be good for now. Okay. So this our body. We were able to generate a pretty good looking gradient like so. Maybe we could even go back to the radial gradient that we had a while ago. There you go. That looks pretty good. We could leave it at that for now. Okay, next thing we're going to do is have a little navbar. So for this navbar, we could target the header and we'll say position relative with 100%, padding of 20 pixels, and a background color. Then we'll just use this certain kind of RGB value. We'll say 25, 25, 25 to give a bit of a grayish color. There you go. And then we'll say the Z index of this will be 20. So we'll see why we need that later on. There you go. So that's what it should look like. So currently we don't see the text here above. We'll try and fix that later on. So next thing is we're going to target the nav, and specifically the nav unordered list. So for that, we're going to have a display of flex, a list style type of none to remove those bullet points. There you go. And then we're going to justify content to give some space around each other and align items to the vertical center of the, like so. So you can see to-do list and create to-do. So those all work pretty nicely. Okay, next is we'll target the ULLIA. We'll say for this, we'll give it a color of white and then a font size of 20 pixels. So now it's looking a bit more visible. There you go, that looks a lot better. Okay, next is, so what if I want to style this differently? So we can do so using navulli.home. Hey, all right. I'll say for this, the width will be 50%. The font weight will be bold, and the font size will be 40 pixels. So it should look something like this. So we're giving the to-do list a bit more priority over the create to-do. The create to-do is just one of the functionalities available for this website. So let me actually scale that down because it's actually a bit too large right now. There you go. This is how it would look like on your end, most likely. So let's also change one more thing. Let's change the LIA hover of this to be a different color. Maybe you want a different color for this. So maybe I'll say the hover effect will be a bisque instead of a, there you go, instead of a color blue. So you could pick any kind of color scheme that you want. This is just one that I'm picking for now since this is my go-to color scheme. All right, next up, we have the containers and layout. Okay, so for this, first thing we're going to do is target the center div. So this is going to put everything in a div to the center. We'll say align item center for this, and the height will be 90 view height. Let's refresh this. There you go. That looks pretty good. It's actually in the center of the page. So that is something that we'd like for our page. Next thing, we're going to create a container. This container will have a position of relative, a z index of 0, a max width of 600 pixels, and a width of 100 pixels, or 100% as well, a margin of 20 pixels, and auto for the left and right. We'll say padding of 20 pixels, background color of, we'll just say white, and then border radius to kind of change the corners. So we'll say 8 pixels for that. And lastly, the box shadow will show 0, 0, and 10 pixels, meaning we won't offset from the vertical and height, vertical and horizontal. We'll just give a bit of blur radius and give it a color of 0, 0, 0 and 0.1 opacity to kind of make it pop from the background. And it should show something like this. There you go. That looks pretty good so far. And we see everything still looks pretty default in this container right here. So let's try and fix that. Well, let's say .container, .header will have a padding bottom of 10 pixels. And we'll see the text align for this will be in the center. So there you go. Currently, there's nothing showing right now. But if we go back to home, it shows the header in the middle of the page. So that is definitely what we want to happen. Next thing, we'll say the row will have a display of flex and a gap of 5 pixels. So what this does is actually changes the layout of our buttons. So let me just change that. And then I'll say the column for this will be having a width of 100%. So there you go. That's what it should be looking like. So it should show something like this so far with your page. So don't worry, we're not yet done. We're going to fill out all of these later on. Okay, so the next thing to do is, all right, let me just check something. Okay, there you go. We should all be good. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to style some certain individual to-do items. So we'll say style for to-do items. So for these, we could say a to-do item could have a no list style type. We'll say none for that. We'll say padding of 10 pixels, margin bottom of 10 pixels, and a background color of white, a border radius of 4 pixels, and a box shadow of 0. And for the vertical, we'll say 2 pixels. We'll give it 4 pixels of blur radius, and RGBA of 0, 0, 0, and 0.1 to give it 10% opacity. So let's try and refresh that. There you go. That is what it is looking like right now. So that looks pretty good. All right. Next thing is let's try adding some styling for our inputs. Okay, so for our inputs, we're going to say input will have a certain kind of styling. We'll say the width will be 100%. The padding will be 10 pixels. The border will be 1 pixel solid and DDD to give it a grayish color. Give it a border radius of 4 pixels like so. A font size of 16 pixels and a margin bottom of 10 pixels to give it a bit of space between each of the inputs. So let's try and refresh it and see what it looks like right here. There you go. That looks quite a bit better. So there are some things we need to edit as well for this. So let's try and target the text area as well. So we'll say, maybe we'll just do a comma here for text area. There you go. That looks a whole lot better. And we'll just add in one more thing saying resize of none to remove that resizing option, therefore giving them only a certain amount of space to put whatever they need. Okay. So this is what it's looking like currently. All right. So next thing is we're going to say the button and input of type submit. So we'll target a certain attribute by putting curly braces and then saying a type of submit like so. We'll say width of 100%, a padding of 10 pixels, a border of none, and a border radius of 4 pixels, a font size of 16 pixels, make it a bit bigger. A cursor of pointer, so it will actually do a pointer when we hover over the button. A margin of 5 pixels for the top and bottom, and 0 for the left and right. And lastly, we'll have a transition for the box shadow. We'll say 0.3 seconds and ease for that. We'll refresh it, and there you go. We actually can't see anything right now for this. Don't worry, we'll fix that up with this hover effect. So we'll say button, hover, and then input of type submit hover. We could actually just copy this and paste it down here. Hover, like so. And we'll say for this, it will have a box shadow of 0, 0, and 10 pixels for a blur radius, along with a black shadow with 30% opacity. So let's refresh this, and we can see this when we click on save. So that looks pretty good so far. All right, so we have other things to look at. Next, we have completed input. So this is an input that shows that a certain task was completed. So we'll say align items, center, justify, content, center, and the padding will be 20 pixels. So let's try and see what that looks like on the page. So update, and we'll see this completed over here. Okay. So next up, we'll say the completed input, oh, not in, out, input, there you go. We'll say the width of this will be auto, the margin will be 0 and 20 pixels, and just give it a bit of space for it. In this case, we kind of just lessen the space for it, so it looks a bit more cohesive. Next up, we have the to-do cancel button. So we'll say the background color will be color white, or just FFF for all of those. The border will be 1 pixel solid, and then we'll say 8D, 8D, 8D to give a certain kind of gray color for that, and we'll say the color of which will be the same for the font. There you go. So let's try and look at that cancel button right now. We'll say delete, and there you go. It looks like it was able to update on that part. So later on, we'll see why we need to do that. Next is we have the to-do update button. So for this, we'll say background color will be 559 to E2, and then the color of which will be white. So there you go. Now our update looks like that. We'll do the same thing for the delete button, except we'll change the color to be a red color. So we'll say something like crimson red. There you go. That looks a lot better. Okay, next we'll have a to-do save button. We'll say to-do save button. So if you want to confirm, we'll say background color will be this kind of green color, and the color of the font will be white as well. There you go. And then next thing we're going to do is we'll say completed, which will have a filter of brightness 0.75 along with opacity of 0.5. So let's try and look at that on the page. There you go. That's what it looks like if it is completed. So that is pretty good. Okay. So now we just have 3 more things to discuss, because currently our update and delete can be a bit more stylized. So let's try and fix that. So we'll say we'll give our detail view a bit more styling. First up, we'll say details, display grid template rows, repeat 1 fraction. So for this, we're just saying all the rows are going to show up with the same kind of width. So that's for the rows, but for each row, we need to have certain kind of column. For the columns, we could say grid template columns, we'll say repeat to 80%, 80 pixels. So let's see how that looks like in the detail view. There you go. So now it's changed to something like this. That looks pretty good. So for this, we'll say gap of 5 pixels and padding of 10 pixels to give stuff a bit of space. There you go. That looks a lot better. So now instead of the buttons being on the bottom, we now show them on the right side of the screen. All right. So next thing we need to discuss is the delete view styling, and we're just going to keep things simple for this. We'll just say the delete text will have a font size of 20 pixels, and the padding bottom will have 20 pixels as well to give it a bit of space on the bottom. And there you go. It's going to look something like this. Okay, so that's pretty much all of our styling done. Maybe one more thing to do is actually target this confirm button. We could inspect on this. So for this, it currently has nothing. So we could say give it a certain kind of class. So what I want to do for that is maybe the to-do delete button. So let's go to the to-do delete, and we'll give it a class of to-do delete button. And there you go. That's looking a lot better. Okay, so that is all of our styling done. We're able to create a pretty cool looking website. And maybe the next thing is we need to have some placeholders here because currently we don't know what all of these mean. So to do that, we're going to go to our forms and make use of some more of these widgets. So for this, we could say something like right here, we'll say self.fields, and we're going to target a certain kind of field. We'll say task name. We'll have a widget, and it'll be forms.text input, since it's going to be a normal kind of text input type of text. The attributes it will have will be another story. This will have a placeholder of task name. So let's see that. There you go. We now have task name, and then we're just going to do the same thing for the description, and that should be good to go. So we'll say description. We'll have the same thing as well, and the placeholder for this will be description, and instead of a text input, we'll say this will be a text area. There you go. That looks a lot better. Okay, so that is pretty much our whole website completed. So we could put in a new task name. We'll say task number 6. The description will be, this is task number 6. And then we'll give a certain kind of day. So there you go. That looks a lot better. Save it. And we now have our task number 6 here. We could update it as well. Maybe make it completed. And status is now true, meaning it's completed. We could even delete this and confirm it to delete it from the server. So that is pretty much our to-do list completed. You could work on your own to do some more furnishings for this if you choose to do so. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the Django tutorial. So in the next video, we're going to go into a bit of a different kind of tutorial series. So for now, this basic Django tutorials is actually the last one in the series. So in the next couple of videos, we're going to be discussing the Django REST framework. But for now, that's going to be it for me. And hopefully you've been able to learn quite a bit from these tutorial videos. And we'll see you in our future endeavors. Thank you for watching.